Hey, this is the World Advice Channel. What I want to talk about today is a question a lot of people have, which is what if we had a one world government in a fair and unbiased way, which will not only, of course, be entertaining for people to watch, but will also satisfy people's natural born curiosity on what would happen if we actually had one. And this series will be made up of different parts, and just watch it, and trust me, you will enjoy it and you won't be disappointed. So anyway, let's get started. So when it comes to the idea of what would happen if we had a one world government, the first thing that would happen, since this is something people have out of curiosity, is simply down to the fact that if we had a one world government, we would have a one world leader, and everything he does in some way, shape, or form would, of course, obviously affect every single person in the world, and not just every single person in the world, every single part of the world for that matter, in one way, shape, or form. Because since he has the true authority over the world, he would have the ability to, of course, affect people across the world in one way or the other through his actions, as we would have a single president of the world. Just like how someone in America has the ability, of course, referring to a president to be more specific, has the ability to, of course, affect the actions of people in one part of America to another part of America, and even in the world. Now put that in someone in a position of a world leader, and you can clearly tell everything he does in one way, shape, or form would affect the whole world in one way or the other. So that's obviously the first thing that would happen. Now, the second thing that would happen if we had a one world government is obviously we would come to what we refer to as a one world culture, as obviously the homogeny of previous nations would not really exist really that much, or in other words, would become more blurred, because obviously we're under one country now, and of course with things like travel and being more accessible and easier than ever before from one place to another, and a general sense of one main identity, because of course of us being under the same government, and as well, to be honest with you, obviously through propaganda you'd hear in the media, we would start having a world that has a similar way of thinking everywhere you go. Okay? Whether it could be down to things like cuisine, customs, culture, people would start changing their way of thinking. Such as, for example, Christmas is a big thing in North America and Europe, and a few different parts of the world. Now Christmas would be a big thing everywhere in the world, for that matter. English is very widely spoken in North America. It's spoken everywhere in the world, but it's more considered a secondary language for other nations. Now in this world, English would be considered the main language, if anything, for that matter. It would be a very popular language that everyone in the world would speak, okay, more often than not. And if anything, people would start speaking their own native language as secondary, if anything, and the world would truly change, and we'd come to a greater one way of thinking, for that matter. And people, for example, Britain or America and so on and so forth, would start, if anything, kind of having a similar way of speaking, and even though they're from two different great parts of the world. And the truth of the matter is, we would truly come to one world culture. Whether you find it boring or not, we really would be heading towards a one world culture. Instead of considering ourselves like American, Canadian, whatever, we'd consider ourselves, if anything, more earthians, if anything, if you want to use that term. We would consider ourselves to be just one people, and people's opinions and beliefs would start gradually changing over time, due to the fact that there's one main way of thinking, when it comes to the way you pursue things. So that's the second thing that obviously happens. Now, the third thing that obviously happened is that when it comes to what would happen if we get a one world government to satisfy people's curiosity, if the government says that they're going to do something, it would get done very efficiently. As obviously, if we lived in a world where we had a one world government, obviously, since there's no restrictions put in place by different nationalities, governments of the world, whatever you like to say, because there's only one government now for that matter, it would be easier to get things done, whether it could be architectural projects. You could easily get the manpower from one part of the world to another, as well as, of course, being able to, alongside that fact, being able to get things, whether scientific discoveries or technological discoveries, done more efficiently, as you obviously have more money and be able to get more brain power to get those things done, because obviously there's no restrictions anymore. There's no need for people to see the world one way or another, based on how things were before. There's not much need for competition between different nations, okay? Competitions between different nations. So obviously, as a result, the world would kind of fall apart. Well, not fall apart, but it would definitely, whenever people say they're going to do something, they would get done effectively. Even though the president of the world might only have an 8-term reign, if he says he wants to get something done, it would be like nothing you've ever seen before. If you want to say we're going to create a 4,000 foot tall building, he may actually be able to do it in his reign, okay? Especially when you take into consideration, obviously, how many people he could obviously manifest, whether it could be people from regions of what we could today would consider China or India. He could get that easily, and it would be ridiculous. It would truly change the world forever, for that matter, to be quite honest with you. It really would get things done quickly, efficiently, unlike today's world where we don't really get things done. So anyway, this is my video for part 1 of this series. If you like this video, remember to thumbs this video up and hit the subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed this video, just to satisfy people's natural born curiosity. For this, whether I believe it's a good idea or not, it's good to just simply answer what would happen in a very straightforward way for anyone who's curious as to what would happen if we truly had a one world government. There's many people say this, many people say that, but if we truly had one, it would be quite an astounding thing, to see what would happen. And of course, it's not happening. It would be way too complicated to happen. So it's a good question to, of course, ask people, and I'm going to give it to you in a straightforward way for you to understand. So, to satisfy your curiosity, obviously. So anyway, this is my video. I hope you enjoyed, and simply put it, peace.